Hello, Tennessee Voices viewers and listeners. This is David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the USA Today Network Tennessee and the Tennessean. Today, I have the pleasure of having as my guest Sunny Bray, who is the founder and CEO of Catalyst Collective. It's a faith-based organization that supports nonprofits by empowering them with resources they need so they can focus on serving their greater community and making an impact. Sunny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. I do want to provide a little bit of clarity. We're actually not a faith-based organization. I am someone who considers myself and have a very strong faith. And that was a reason as to why I started the business.
Well, tell me more about that as well, in terms of what caused you to start the collective.
Yeah. So I think that there are certain life experiences that you go through that lead you to where you are today. And I think that there are a couple of different experiences that I've gone through that led me to start Catalyst Collective. Early in my career, I had never really considered myself an entrepreneur. I was more of an intrapreneur, someone that helped other people grow and scale their businesses. My background is in sales and business development. I've helped small businesses, primarily tech startups, grow and scale into new markets. And pretty early in my career, I got very involved in some leadership training. I'm someone who believes strongly in building a network, helping to build relationships with people, and to really try to be better than the person you were before. And I think that we were each given a set of spiritual gifts to make a positive impact in this world. And so I had gotten involved in leadership training. The leadership training led me to an opportunity to really discover more about the community that I lived in. At the time, I was living in Indianapolis. They took us to an area of town called Tent City. And that's when I discovered poverty, people living that they were homeless, food insecurity. And it completely broke my heart. I had no idea that people were living in those types of conditions, especially living in a city for over a decade. And that was a game changer for me. I think from there, I decided that I wanted to do more with this life, that I wanted to have more of an impact. I was always searching for this self-fulfillment. And so then at that point, I just kind of had this calling to go work with nonprofits. I wanted to use the skill set that I had to serve the greater good and to have a further impact. A few years later, I lost a really close friend of mine to melanoma. He was 27 years old, and in that short time on this earth, he had such a major impact. And so that's when I decided to relocate and return home to Nashville to be closer to my family. I continued doing some consulting. I immersed myself in this community. I saw that it was very philanthropic, a very giving kind of servant mentality community that really wanted to give back. And I saw an opportunity to essentially transform and I think collaborate with other passionate leaders, organizations, nonprofits, funders for transformation. And so I started working with the nonprofit. I brought them here from Atlanta. I assembled a board of 12 CIOs. And these were all things I had never done before. Essentially, I've never led a nonprofit organization, but I am the type of person where I just kind of jump right in and figure it out. And so I did all of these things. I was working on strategic partnerships. I secured funding from HCA Foundation. I was making great strides, and again, had just developed some really wonderful relationships in our community and continue to see these challenges, these needs that, to me, people who are on the front lines of serving our communities, they are doing very, very powerful, impactful work, yet they're doing so with limited resources. And so essentially I formed the collective, Catalyst Collective, and we are equipping nonprofits with mission critical resources.
That's great. I'd like to talk to you more about how you developed the wherewithal and the determination to do what you did, because it can be a little bit scary for people, I would imagine, who are, for the first time taking on something that they don't really know or understand. And, what did you learn about yourself along the way?
It still is scary, and I am still learning. I would consider myself a lifelong learner, but you know, I will fully admit that there were times within the last 3 years that I questioned, I doubt, I experienced imposter syndrome, and I was in this kind of like paralysis analysis of, you know, I had to get everything in place before I move forward with the business. And it's never going to be perfect. And you just have to do it and trust the process, yet also surround yourself with the right people. I think if you've got this kind of drive, this passion, this purpose, that can be really magnetic for a lot of people. And I think they start to believe in you, and they trust and they respect and they want to be a part of it too. Um, and so I've had the opportunity to have a really, really great support system. My husband, my partner, if it weren't for him and his support and his encouragement, this wouldn't be possible. If it weren't for my mother-in-law who watches my baby, this wouldn't be possible. You know, I have just really wonderful network of people. My mentor, for example, I mean, people that just believe in you. And I think that is encouraging and validating. But I think that's what helps drive. And then also, I think just knowing that I have a deeper purpose and an impact to contribute to this world.
Now, nonprofits specifically, what about them attracted you to want to work with them? Because obviously there's many options, whether it's private sector, nonprofits, government sector. What was appealing for you?
It's so funny that you say that, because I think when I first had this idea to contribute my skill set, my strengths to the nonprofit community, I had a former informal mentor years ago, corporate attorney, actually highly advised me not to. He said that there is no money in nonprofits, that my skill set was too strong to go down that path. And I think that's the funny thing about your purpose and your calling, that it's undeniable that if you're meant to do it, that it's you can't not do it. And so it's just, I've been someone who I think I like impact. I think that's why I worked with the small businesses. I love being able to kind of roll my sleeves up and do all the things and see the significant change and impact and effect that I'm able to have on an organization. And then with nonprofits specifically, there are what, 1,800 nonprofits in Nashville, and they're all doing incredible work, yet we don't know. And I think it's important to help amplify those voices, help empower them with the tools and the resources, so that they can continue to further their mission. I think that it's important to help them tell their story so that they can continue to engage donors, volunteers, and further the work that they do. Essentially, they're on the front lines. And so that's kind of my small role in being able to change the world, is by empowering them with the tools and resources that they need. And ultimately, that will result in transformation and meaningful impact.
So a few years ago, we have COVID. And I remember I was part of a conversation that was put on by the Center for Nonprofit Management. 200 nonprofit leaders were on this virtual call, and they were really nervous about the future. What happens to nonprofits when you have so much uncertainty? Do you recall, not necessarily the specific meeting, but the feeling and sentiment of the nonprofits, really having to face the potential that they might not be around soon after this?
Absolutely. And I'll be completely honest, it affected how I did business too. I think during that time, there was so much unknown, uncertainty, fear. And I think I was allowing my personal feelings about what maybe other people were going through, being in a time of transition or being furloughed, that they were concerned with money. And I thought, well, how could I expect any of these nonprofits to pay for services right now? They are scrambling on figuring out if they're even going to be around in 6 months. And I don't know what it was exactly. It may have been that I intentionally continue to surround myself with very positive individuals. I have a support system of female entrepreneurs, but I just snapped out of it, to be honest. I think I shifted my mindset and I changed the narrative, and I said, if anything, this is when the nonprofits need us the most, because they are having to shift, because they have to pivot, because they're unable to meet in person. How are they continuing to engage our community leaders? How are they doing fundraising? How can they continue to further their mission and do their programs and just tell the story? And so I realized that they needed us more than ever at that point.
Thank you for sharing that. We're at the midway point of the conversation where I like to ask guests about what they've been doing to cope during this time of pandemic. We certainly appear to be getting out of it. More people are out than they were before, in 2022. But during especially the hard times of shut-ins and during that time where there was a lot of isolation, what did you do to stay healthy and well? Leaders often focus on other people that they sometimes forget about themselves. So what are you reading, watching, doing to stay healthy and well?
So during lockdown and isolation, I was actually pregnant. And so I had no problem staying home and in my sweatpants. I actually really enjoyed it. And it's funny because I consider myself, I think anyone who knows me knows that I get energy from people. I love being out and about and meeting people and hearing their stories and learning from them and finding ways to partner and collaborate and work together. And I think at that time in my life, I slowed down. I really, really slowed down, and I allowed myself the opportunity to, I think, fully enjoy that experience. And so I remember thinking, I was like, I could do this forever. And then I snapped out of it, of course, and thought, no, I need to be back in person. But during that time, I read a lot, actually. I want to say, I think I read during that lockdown period, I think I read something like 17 books.
Wow.
Yeah. And I will fully admit, I don't read that often. I listen to podcasts. I do a devotion in the morning, prayer. I exercise. There's small little daily habits that I incorporate that help keep me balanced.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And one of the things too that I want to reveal to viewers and listeners is that you were kind enough to join a diversity and inclusion task force meeting. The Tennessean has an inclusion DEI task force that meets every single month, and we were delighted to have you in May to talk about AAPI month. For those who don't know, it's Asian American and Pacific Islander month, and the idea is to celebrate achievements, but at the same time to call attention to some of the things that are not so good, such as the rise in hate crimes against Asians and Pacific Islanders. Could you talk a little bit about your own experience being part of the community, and at the same time, how that has affected your own trajectory and your thoughts in terms of navigating the world?
Thank you for asking that question. I know that you and I have had a few conversations in regards to that. I've been in Nashville now since 2015, and I've been a little disappointed and frustrated of the lack of Asian American leaders that I've seen, and just the lack of the amplification of their voices.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have a lot of wonderful leaders in our community, but and there are organizations in place that are working to move the needle and to really help make our city the model city for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to help create actions of prosperity for people of color. So I think we are heading in the right direction, but I'd certainly love to see more. I know that I am not the only Asian American community leader, and I think it's important that we just continue to uplift those voices. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but at the same time, there is a deep sense of frustration too.
And for yourself, in terms of, because I can understand it from my vantage point, being someone who is son of immigrants, Latino, Colombian, and Cuban, sometimes you feel otherized, sometimes you feel, and I think a lot of times people don't do it on purpose, but I think sometimes you do notice that that you may not be part of the particular club that may be, benefiting from society. And
Right.
how does that figure into your thinking and your just your brain?
Yeah. That's okay. I think I like a challenge, and I like to be able to build relationships, and I like to be able to see if I can infiltrate some of those Nashville circles and be a little disruptive. I'm here and I'm just getting started, and I'm not going anywhere. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but those frames that you see behind me, I almost didn't put those behind me, but I realized that I had a friend that actually encouraged me to celebrate some of my successes and my accomplishments, that I've worked hard for those, and to see it from a perspective of, not only did I work hard for those and I should be proud of them, but to take it a step further, to see that not only with me celebrating those because I'm proud, but it's also because I am perhaps encouraging, motivating, inspiring someone else, a younger version of me, that sees possibility, sees opportunity. And I think that's important. I'm not only doing it for my daughter, but other young professionals that want to make a difference, that want to have an impact in this world.
I like how you put that in terms of being disruptive, because this is something that has come up in businesses themselves over the last couple of decades, but not in the same context. And I've also heard about, people finding, either being at the table or being on the menu when it comes to, these conversations. So it seems like you have the attitude that in order to, you're going to get in there, and it's a fearless, it's an act of fearless, it's an act of courage, perhaps. And but it also is one that I think you may not always notice it because you're doing it as opposed to really thinking about it.
Right. Well, I mentioned this earlier. I came from a table meeting today, actually, and we all want opportunity, and we want others to be able to create space for us. And we want things to be inclusive and equitable. But at the same time, a lot of that responsibility falls on yourself, that you cannot just sit back and wait for things to come to you or to be handed to you, that you actually have to have that initiative to go out there and search for it, and to ask for what you want and what you need, and identify those resources and advocate for yourself, and go out and get them, and build those relationships, and have those sponsors and people that believe in you. And if someone's willing to give you their time, which is the most important value and resource that they can give you, i.e. a mentor, take advantage of that. Learn from the people that God has placed in your life, and just do what you can and leave this world a better place.
Well, Sunny, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. Again, this is Sunny Bray, founder and CEO of Catalyst Collective. You can learn more about her organization at catalystcollective.co. And before I let you go, though, I always like to ask guests if they would leave us with some words of wisdom to help us get through this challenging time.
I have a couple. So some things that I've been kind of living by is use your no's to protect your yeses, and use your spiritual gifts for positive impact.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. May you stay well and healthy. And I am so grateful for your time on the show.
Likewise. Thank you, David.